To my fire signs Aries, Leo and Sagittarius, this is the Scorpio lunar eclipse. You'll find the timestamps for your rising sign listed below. Hello Aries rising, welcome to your horoscope for the lunar eclipse in Scorpio. This is happening on the 6th of May at 3:36 a.m. if you're in the southern hemisphere with me. This is the third chapter of a three-part series. So first of all, before we go anywhere, I want to take you back to almost exactly 1 year ago. On the 16th of May in 2022, we received our first lunar eclipse in Scorpio. For you, Aries, this was short-circuiting, pulling the plug on your 8th house, which is where we grieve. It's where we come into sincere connection with other folks and where we grapple with the lessons that are involved in all of that kind of stuff. So if we can gently journey back there, I do have horoscopes that are recorded for that period of time too. I'll try and put a link somewhere so you can listen back if you need to prompt your memory. But there's a sincerity to this eclipse. An eclipse in Scorpio is a dredging of emotional intensity. And so 1 year ago, something happened and it brought to your face to face, you came up against the possibility of the meaning of life. You potentially had to say goodbye to something that meant a lot to you. And it was really difficult. And so now this third chapter of the story is here to finish that stitch, to put the closing details on this part of your life. It's really tough, Aries. And I really want to be so supportive of you throughout all of this. An eclipse in the 8th house, from my chart, from my experience, is quite profound. And it does ask us to leave something behind. The 8th house always reminds us of what we need to leave behind. And that can be really difficult to look at when we think about the moon and the cycle of reminders that we're met with. To have an eclipse here, it's out of your hands. So there's nothing that you need to do at this eclipse, Aries. I would probably shelter myself. I would probably make sure that I'm in an environment that I feel supported and I feel nurtured and I feel calm and safe to deal with whatever might raise up. Now, normally these horoscopes are quite full of astrological language and quite full. I'm trying to prove myself in some way with the way that I'm teaching. I'm refining my teaching style, and I have been absorbing and learning and steeping myself in astrological lessons, but I think a lot of my power lays in that of the tarot reader. So I want to give you that intro into this eclipse. I will remind you that there is other recordings from a year ago that you can listen back to if there's some memory that needs to be triggered as to how this eclipse in your 8th house might be playing out. But I want to set all of that aside as well. And I want to pull you some tarot cards, and I want to give you a gorgeous tarot reading right here, right now, face to face. And hopefully these messages will see you through. Hopefully there'll be something here that can guide you into the clearing. We're at the arse end of eclipse season. You know, it only happens once every 6 months, and gosh darn it, all sorts of things can shed. Depending on your birth chart and where your planets lay, it might be worth you looking to Scorpio into seeing who is guiding you, what emphasis is in Scorpio for you in your chart, and what short circuit, what shocked the system are you looking at? I got the Knight of Wands. I got the Eight of Cups. And I got the Hanged One. There's a really clear journey here for me, Aries. And I reckon that whatever has been brought to you right now, whatever passion, I think that someone's probably approached you with a lot of fire, a lot of will. They've said something to you, or they're offering you something that is really full on. And it's going to take you a little bit to, you don't have to accept that offer straight away, you know? I think that what I'm seeing here in your trip around the zodiac is that right now you're at a time where it might be worth you going out and seeking out the next cup. When I say cup in the tarot, I mean an emotional lesson or an emotional bond, a connection with someone. And at this point in your life, Aries, you've got everything stacked up. You can see it all clear as day. And there's something missing. There's something that you can't quite put your finger on, but you know that it's up to you to go and get it. And so right now, you're sort of like almost like preparing your knapsack. You're putting everything, you're packing everything that you need to take on this journey, and you're about to set off and go and find that. And from what I see, Aries, it's not going to be smooth sailing. Like, as much as this shock to the system, this offer, it's almost like a confrontation, I feel, fire to fire. You know, Aries rising, you're a fire sign, you've got a fire soul, you're an instigator, you start. You are probably the Knight of Wands in your mind's eye. You can probably relate to this card really clearly. There's something really direct about the Knight of Wands, and there's something really forthright in their message. It's very magical to have so much fire in your chart. There's a lot of different ways you can read the fire element. One of the main ones I would really suggest is that it's magic. But the Knight in a tarot reading is someone external to you. It's someone else. So who can you think of who has come to you and said, this is what we need to do. This is what I have to offer you. Why don't we start this? Let's go, Aries, you and me. Let's do it. Remember? Remember, remember. Remember what we felt together. What I can see for you, Aries, is that you need to seek this out. You need to seek out the truth for yourself. No amount of pressure or no amount of glamour is necessary right now. An eclipse in the 8th house is going to really hit you in your basement. It's going to bring up a lot of feelings about spiritual attachment. In the 8th, we come together. I think of some beautiful lyrics to a musical, Hedwig and the Angry Inch. I'm not sure if you know that one. It means a lot to me. That text has been with me since I was a very young person. It speaks a lot about duality, and it speaks a lot about spiritual essence, binding together or bringing together polarity. And there's a song called The Origin of Love that's in that musical. And it speaks about the genesis point or the story of soul connection. And there's an intense feeling there. If we think about the idea of us being split down the middle and spending our whole lives looking for the other half to our essence, this is where we can start to gently, and I'm so reluctant to do it, and I don't know enough about it, and I don't even know if I believe it, but you hear a lot of language about twin flame astrology and twin flame spirituality. don't know so much about that. I think in an artistic way, which is the only way that I really relate to anything is through art, I can listen to the lament of the twin flame in The Origin of Love. But that's not up to anybody else to tell you that. No one can come to you and say, we are meant to be together, you and I. You'll feel that. The Eight of Cups is that journey. It's going to seek out recognizing that there's a collection here of emotional lessons, emotional, successes and pitfalls. And what a beautiful collection. Some of those cups are pretty banged up too. But there's one missing. There's one missing right there. And so this is the time for you to go out and seek that out. The reason I say it's not going to end in a happy ending is because you got the Hanged One in your final position here. This is Pisces energy, and this is a real relinquishment of control, which might be difficult for you, Aries, and that's all right, That's okay. But I think if you close your eyes and if you recognize the short-circuiting that has occurred in your 8th house over the last year, there may have been a power, that's sort of, the lights are flickering in the house, it's sort of like my 8th house is so full of grief and loss, and I feel bound to some folks in this life, and I wish that I wasn't, and I'm trying as hard as I can to move through that and to let go and to say goodbye so I can open myself up to receive what next is coming. I feel, there's seaweed around my ankles right now, Aries. It's pulling me down. It's not pulling me down to kill me though. It's pulling me down so I can rest and so I can see clearly after my eyes adjust at the bottom of that salt water. And I can look out and I can feel less pressure to keep moving forward. Eclipses do that. It's kind of nice that they happen every 6 months. It's an enforced stop. In this life where there's so much pressure on production, isn't there? There's so much pressure on producing and showing up and moving forward. I had a dream last night and I woke up this morning, was reluctant to wake up this morning, but it was, I don't know if this happens to you a lot, Aries, but I've got quite an active mind. I'm seldom not thinking or talking to myself. And when I woke up this morning, the chatter had already begun, but the rhythmic chant that was going on in my head was time is not linear. Time goes around in a circle, around and around. The sphere of the globe, the sphere of the sun, the journey that we take around the sun is a circle. There's nothing linear about that. And so if you think about it in that way, there's no finish line that we need to worry about. And sometimes things come back around. And this could be a feeling of grief that might be showing up for you at this eclipse. And you might think to yourself, oh, I thought that I did my work. I thought that I'm moving through this. I thought that I was done with that. If you're not done with that, Aries, that's all right. You're not to feel defective because you've come back to the temple for a while to grieve. You've come back to the grave to grieve. I would suggest, if you need something more from this one, Aries, to go back and have a little listen to the last eclipse horoscope that I gave, which was 6 months ago, and see if you can connect the dots, connect the two. If you'd like me to read your birth chart, I would be more than happy to. I would really love to. You can head to umaruby.com and book yourself a session with me, and I can maybe explain to you the difference between your sun sign, your moon sign, and your rising sign. The way that I write these things is pretty rising sign heavy, because our rising sign casts the die for all of the houses in our chart. If you've never seen your chart before, I'd be thrilled to show you. I'm going to be speaking to you in 2 weeks, and we're going to be talking about something which kind of feels like a bit of a portal. There's an opportunity for us to bring in something fresh if we've been feeling less in control or autonomous about our finances. Then in 2 weeks we get to cast a spell. We get to be witches. We haven't been able to do that for maybe 16 months or so. We've had to really go with this eclipse energy. But there's a clearing happening, Aries, and I'd be so thrilled to guide you through that. So it's up to you. If you'd like me to read your chart, head to umaruby.com and send me a message. Much love to you. You take care. Hello Leo rising, welcome to your horoscope for the last lunar eclipse in Scorpio. This is happening on Saturday the 6th of May, if you're in the southern hemisphere with me, at 3:36 a.m. So you might want to dial it back if you're in the northern hemisphere. This is the 3rd chapter of a 3-part series, and it is all wrapped up in your 4th house, which is how we come into connection with our ancestry. It's our philosophy on home, where we find our roots and our privacy and our protection. And so what I'm feeling optimistic about, Leo, is that this kind of difficult narrative, this difficult story that we've been following for the past 12 months, the first lunar eclipse in Scorpio happened on May 16th of last year, so there may have been the first jolt to the system insofar as the way that you feel protected, you feel safe, and you feel at home. This is the final one. And yeah, it's there's a lot wrapped up in that, isn't there? I know that in the way that I teach this sort of stuff, or the way that I sort of profess my perspective, it's quite astrologically heavy of late. And I really, that's my journey. That's what I'm learning. That's what I'm moving towards. But I do really recognize my skill as a tarot reader. So what I want to do is just pull you some cards as I move forward here. And as we sort of be gentle with this kind of eclipse, we don't need to fear them. We don't need to be sort of trepidatious or kind of in a state of anxiety about what terrible thing might happen. But if we think about it as the power being pulled out of the wall, something is sort of like resetting itself as far as the way that you consider your place in the family line, or the way that your root system, the health of your root system. Where have you set up, Leo? Where is your home as far as you can see it? What lineage is in your body, in your blood? What are you carrying forward in this life? It might be a really great opportunity for you to shed some ancestral trauma that maybe is sort of wrapped up in your system right now. Eclipses can do all sorts of strange things, and because this is a dragon's tail eclipse as well, if you think about the horoscopes that I released 2 weeks ago with that diagram of the dragon's head and the dragon's tail, wherever the dragon's tail is, we feel a shedding. We sort of feel that the lesson has been sort of integrated, and we can, sort of release whatever needs to fall away as we move with the dragon. Yeah, so I got the 10 of Pentacles, the 2 of Wands, and the 10 of Swords. That's 10, 10, and a 2 in the center. I feel that legacy is on the in the front of your mind right now, Leo. Perhaps you're thinking about your bloodlines and where they began. You can trace that back and back and back and back and back and back, and where they're going as well. And it feels like that there's some kind of portal that is open for you, or that you long to be open for you in order to continue that bloodline or continue that lineage. And what I see right now is that this eclipse is kind of the biggest reminder, or the biggest message that I can give you at this eclipse, is that whatever sense of anxiety that is wrapped up in continuing the bloodline, carrying it forward, carrying it through, what I sense here is that there's been a lot of sleepless nights and a lot of you thinking about the future. And that's really understandable. That's really natural. And I think that if you were to share that with other people, rather than keeping such a sort of brave face, fear of the future or dread for the future is a problem that can be eased if you share how you've been feeling. All of the language that is sort of drowning us at the moment about, world's end, the world being doomed, the human species being untenable to carry on because of the division, because of the greed, because of the hate. If you're wanting to start a family, or if you're, this is simply wanting to feel welcome enough to be a human citizen and to stay here, there's a lot of guilt that can be wrapped up in the fact that you are a human being. You look around at your peers. Look around at your peers. Zoom back in for the moment, Leo. What I know is that too much zooming out, some zooming out's incredible. It's really great to have a wider scope of what's going on and what our responsibility is, or how our responsibility can be guided or strengthened in order to aid some sense of improvement for the group. But sometimes there's just too much responsibility that we can feel until we... I'm going to tell you a story about my mum. My mum is an incredible woman, and she's lived really light her whole life. She's never really had much, but what she's had is beautiful, and has had little guidance on this road, and is constantly absorbing so much information and listening and watching and learning and trying to refine her position as an authority figure, she's in her 60s now, as how best to guide the next generations through from her experience. How can she show them the way? In tandem with that, she feels incredible environmental guilt. And for someone who's lived so lightly, who doesn't own anything, really, what she owns can be packed up in a couple of boxes. What she's taken, even less, Consumerism never really touched my mum, and yet she feels so much responsibility for humanity's consumption, overconsumption of the earth's resources. And so is consistently trying to think about ways that she can whittle down her imprint, her thumbprint. I said to her the other day, because she was feeling quite guilty, I wasn't feeling guilty, but there was definitely a look of like that she was crestfallen. She was sort of looking, like, I think it was about soft plastics or something like that. And there was an outlet where she could, she was collecting her soft plastics and wanting to donate them to this space. And soon, the veil was lifted on that. And these businesses that were set up in soft plastics collection revealed themselves to be just that, just businesses. And so there's warehouses full of soft plastics, full of rubbish. And so Mum was feeling really guilty about what she was buying that was in soft plastic, and how she was getting rid of that. And our cupboards are full with washed out jam jars and all of that sort of thing. Everything that is taken is sort of repurposed as much as she can, but still there's this guilt on behalf of the human species. And it was a really lovely conversation, because all I could do was say, you've taken so little that you needn't feel so much guilt for what has been taken, Mum. And so I say all of this, Leo, because if there's, what I see is these feelings, this thought of legacy, what am I going to leave behind? Where are my bloodlines in my fourth house being traced? Where are they going? Will I start a family or not? Perhaps I won't. If it's an impulse for you, Leo, if that's something that you really want to do, there is no guilt for you to feel about wishing to have children and providing them with a life. And you know what you'll find is that those children will be guided into the next stage of evolution and consciousness because of your parentage, because you decided to put on that mantle as parent and to guide these folks through. There's a lot of language around, population crisis and things like that. And from a capitalist standpoint, from an outer standpoint, the world is, we've got to keep that population cooking. What if we're going to have a generation of old people? Then what will we do? For the world's economy, we've got to keep producing. And I think that if you're a politically minded person, you can listen to that language and think, well, I'm not going to contribute to that. I'm not having a child because I wish to keep this machine going. Absolutely not. That's not my legacy. And so there might be a bit of guilt about that. Perhaps you already have kids and you're thinking to yourself, oh God, I don't know how to teach these young ones I can feel the pressure, and I don't want to have them inherit my burden or my guilt about consumption. But how do I, and if I don't have kids, then maybe I shouldn't. There's a portal opening at this eclipse, I think, Leo, and if you think about a year ago and think about everything that I've just said and think about how your mind was working, or perhaps think about your circumstance, were you willing to activate progress in your bloodline, and did that not work out? This is the final Scorpio lunar eclipse chapter. And forgive me if I'm overstepping a boundary here, but it is Scorpio. It's a Scorpio lunar eclipse. So I feel confident and satisfied that I can go a little deeper. The Ten of Swords in background of that card, the sun is coming up. The sun is you, Leo. The sun on every level of consciousness and astrological philosophy rules your sign. The sun is our heart chakra. You rule the heart chakra, Leo. So trust that the decision to start a family or not is really up to you, and that it's going to be a beautiful, sacred portal opening. Whatever happens in your fourth house, where we find security and comfort and privacy, whatever short-circuiting happens at this time, Leo, roll with that punch, but understand that this is the final lesson in this series, in this cycle of eclipses. They've really not been easy. I'm recording these right bang in the center of the eclipses. It's taken me all day to put on my eyeshadow, I tell you what. But I did it. I did it so I could give you this message. And I'm going to leave that there. And I'm going to tell you that I love you, Leo. And I'm going to tell you that the eclipses do bring with them information, and they do bring with them a sort of universal clearing. It's out of our hands at this time. So let it wash over you. Let everything be revealed. And from that point of clearing, you can move forward. If you have never had your birth chart read, I would love to do it for you, Leo. So you can head to umaruby.com and you can book yourself a birth chart reading via the readings page of my website. And I'm going to be with you in 2 weeks, and we're going to be talking about Taurus, and we're going to be having a greater sense of access to our Taurian parts. It's been a long time that we've been experiencing eclipses in Taurus as well as Scorpio, and so it's kind of been out of our hands. There's been this emotional intensity, that we've had to kind of just work with. But in 2 weeks, we'll get to taste that clearing. So, that's it. Love you very much. Head to umaruby.com. There's a whole bunch of stuff you can look at and read there too. You take care, Leo. I love you very much. Bye. Hello, Sagittarius rising. Welcome to your horoscope, your tarot reading for the Scorpio lunar eclipse happening on Saturday, the 6th of May at 3:36 a.m. if you're in the southern hemisphere with me. Now, as opposed to maybe some of my more recent horoscopes or astrological readings, I'd like to drop the chop a bit. Here's my face, which you've maybe missed. It's been a month. You're welcome. And I want to read you some tarot cards. I think that would be probably the best thing for us to do, Sag, at this final lunar eclipse in your 12th house, which is where we come face to face with the unconscious. The 12th house has a lot of connotations, some of them to do with some more difficult spirits. The 12th is where we can swim freely in the land that connects us all. When we dream, we can think of the 12th house, that place that lies beyond physical reality. In that space, there can be some more difficult confrontations. And so to have eclipses, and it's been a year now, so the first lunar eclipse that happened in Scorpio was on May the 16th of last year. And so if there's been something that has felt extra specially destabilizing, over this last year, this eclipse is the final chapter for you to receive what presents itself and then make plans to approach that topic. Sometimes in the 12th house, we come into battle with our mental health. Things like anxiety can swell in the 12th house. Things like depression can drag us down too. And so if you're feeling any of these symptoms at the moment, Sagittarius, you mustn't feel any more guilt for that. And I would highly recommend you, if it's been something that you've been holding off on, then really approaching therapy, really making that commitment to yourself and to your internal health, to speak to someone that you trust and that can listen to you. I think that in my experience with therapy, the most sacred part of it is that it's a completely how do I say it? It's a completely neutral ground. You can talk about all of your relationships or all of your internal goings on in a space that is very calm and non-judgmental, and also there's no stakes, there's no emotional stakes for that person. As much as it's so encouraged to speak to those that we love, I think that communication is key to any healthy relationship. Sometimes you can't speak about the whole truth and nothing but the truth with someone that you love, because what you've got to say kind of includes them. And it could just be a thought or a perspective at the moment, and that's what therapy is for. A great psychologist will be able to sit with you with no judgment and to listen to what needs to come out at that time. And so for these eclipses to be happening in the 12th, it may not show up in that way. You might just be having some really juicy dreams at the moment, and you're thinking to yourself, whoa, what was that all about? How can I sew that into my reality? What was that message trying to tell me? That could be a way that these eclipses have played out for you over the last 12 months. If you feel that you're sort of in a moment of severity, then I'm just going to be really honest with you, get some therapy. I know that access to therapy is different depending on who you are and where you're from and what government offers it. I know in Australia it's kind of difficult because there is waiting lists that you need to go on, and the government subsidy sort of changes depending on what doctor you go to as well. I know that it can be sort of unaffordable. But if it's something that you've been putting off because of pride, then this is probably the message for you, that you need to set down that pride and recognize that there's actually nothing wrong with you. You're a human being, and it's actually a step in the right direction to come into therapy, to be kind to your mind, your mental health. Include that in the way that you include your physical health. There's nothing wrong with you. There's no shame in seeking out pathways to healing. Now, I got the Seven of Pentacles, the Queen of Wands, and the Star. And so what I see here, Sag, is that it sort of feels like, there's something that you've been working on and you want to chuck it in the bin. And it might have been taking from you too much. It feels to me like you've been really committed to this thing, you've been committed to the growth, you've been committed to allowing it to flourish, but you've also been sort of, holding back all of the different other pressures in life because you've been so single focused and devoted to this one part of your life. And from your vantage point, the results haven't flourished to the way that you want them to. You can't see the growth. And so at this moment, you're sort of tempted to throw that all in the bin. But what you don't see is that I have the Queen of Wands here, and I think that when I see the Queen of Wands these days, I think of the asteroid Vesta. I'm not sure if you know about that so much, but long story short, in Greek mythology, Vesta was the keeper of the sacred flame, the goddess of the fire, the spiritual fire, the one that took care of the hearth. And I bring Vesta up because in your 6th house, which is ruled by Taurus, in your 6th house, Vesta has just come into conjunction with Mercury, who is the planet that brings intel, brings information to us. Mercury is retrograde right now, so there's sort of a going over in your 6th house. There's a sort of review that's happening at this time. But in Mercury's backward motion, they've come into almost exact conjunction with Vesta, with this Queen of Wands. And so what I'm kind of wanting to remind you, Sag, is that in your everyday rhythm, in the way that you sort of wake up every morning and brush your teeth and go into the workspace, go into the studio, go into your place of work, there's something that you're cooking up right now that is really, really vital and really important for, and you might not see it that way just yet, but I have a feeling that it's really kind of pertinent for your sense of spirituality, also for others and their sense of spirituality, whatever you're weaving right now, whatever you're creating, whatever you're making, whatever you're committed to right now, has this sort of, there's a resonance to it, is what I'm really feeling. There's magical qualities to this. And I think that because these eclipses in Scorpio and in Taurus have been sort of ping-ponging us back between the 12th, which is our unconscious reality, it's sort of the limitlessness of where we all might potentially sink to the bottom or, swim to the depths, and the cold, hard reality of your daily life. It's sort of, I can feel this sort of like, I know that there's something that I need to be doing with my life, and that ain't it, kid. I'm trying to decipher these messages in my dreams. I'm trying to figure out what I'm supposed to be doing with my freaking life. Because at this point, what I thought that I was doing with my life, that ain't it, kid. It's not working. It's not working. I've been working so hard my whole life. And where are the results? It's not so much financially. I mean, sometimes the pentacles can represent money, but they can also just represent a sense of sort of grounded reality, the comfort that we feel in our physical self. To have eclipses in your 12th and in your 6th it's like being, it's a catapult between limitlessness and absolute limits. But at this eclipse, Vesta is met up with Mercury. So open your eyes and look around, Sag. If there's a body of work that you've been creating, then I would really encourage you to go back over that body of work and to look at what was happening 1 year ago, and look, if it's a third draft that you're on, or I don't know what it is that you do for a living, Sagittarius, but go back specifically to a year ago and then start to mark the progress. Don't look into your bank account, or don't look into your subscribers list or your followers, or whatever, however it is that we all, measure our worth at this time. Don't look at those figures. Look at your output. What were you talking about 1 year ago? And what are you talking about now? And what have you learned? And what are you bringing with you from the unconscious realms into your physical day-to-day practice? The last card I got for you is the Star. Now, in astrology, the star is Aquarius. You know, it's the water of life poured forth for thirsty humanity. In the tarot, the star is one with nothing to hide. They have all of the answers for us, and they have the power to move water. Water is our emotions. And so I think that probably in your solo, which is what I feel, Sag, it's sort of this solo practice, this solo vibe, toiling away in solitude, working on something. I think that this eclipse is going to sort of bring some sense of freedom. When I look at your chart, Aquarius rules your second house, which is where we think about money and our resources. And so Pluto has just entered there and is just stationed retrograde, I might say as well. So there's going to be more lessons, God help us, to go over again. But I think this reading is coming to you at this moment, Sag, to urge you to go the distance, to recognize the polarity between the unconscious world and the conscious world, the vastness of your 12th house and the possibility and also the boundlessness of that space too. There's no barriers there. So there is, swim and swim and swim and swim and swim and swim. We've got flesh and blood and fingernails and hair and teeth. We've got to bring it back into this world, right? Whatever we discover out there, our job as little meat sacks is to interpret it and to use it on this plane. And so these eclipses between Taurus and Scorpio have been flinging you out and dragging you back, and flinging you out and dragging you back. There may have been things in your health that have sort of cropped up too. Your physical vessel has been eclipsed maybe over the last 12 months. And healthy mind, healthy body, take care of your physical vessel and also take care of your mental vessel too. I've got brains for a reason. I don't quite know why, and I bloody get trapped in mine all the time. But these eclipses have been urging you, reminding you of good health in here and here as well. So whatever gets the power pulled out again, take the lesson, Sag. Really listen to it. Really listen to it and figure out about your environment too. Are you in the environment that you're in right now? Is that aiding or abetting? Wait, is that the same word? Aiding and abetting? Yeah, no, that is the same word. Is your physical environment aiding your mental and physical health, or is it detracting from that? And that could be a real good 6th house lesson for you too. Is my actual physical environment healthy or unhealthy? And do I need to friggin' boot it, leave, like I've been thinking about for all this time, but I just haven't done it because it's easier if I just stay put? Yeah, that's the message. That's your reading. It was a bit scatterbrained, but you're welcome. I'm doing my best. I am with you, Sag, during this chippy choppy, high seas, rolling tides time at the moment. So that's it. There's your horoscope. There's your reading. Do head to umaruby.com and get your birth chart read by me if you've not already. If you need to check in with me again, I can read your tarot cards. If you've not been to Uma Ruby before, I highly encourage you to do so. There's a whole bunch of writing of mine that you can read over there. There's some paintings that you can have a look at. But you can get a little further insight into my philosophy on life and why it is that I do this sort of work now. Yeah. Take care. I love you very much. I'm going to be with you in 2 weeks, and we'll be talking about the first new moon in Taurus that we have any say in. So this is your 6th house. This is your physical ritual, your daily rhythm, and your ecosystem as far as your health is concerned. So at a new moon, we get to manifest, of which we haven't been able to for the last 18 months. So this time we get to. So all of those health goals, or all of those, like environment goals, all of that stuff that's been coming to mind about what's best for you, what's best for your health, mentally or physically. In 2 weeks, we get to action plan that. We get to write that down and to move forward and to ask for the appropriate environment for us to flourish. So yeah, that's it. Love you, Sagittarius. I'll speak to you soon. Bye.